Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today you're going to hear from Chris Didier. Chris is a father of 3. He's a retired Air Force officer and a commercial pilot. In December of 2020, Chris lost his 17-year-old son, Zach, to a fake pill made with illicit fentanyl. This conversation is extremely important. After listening to this conversation, you will know how to talk to your child, what to talk to your child about, how to protect them from this epidemic. And if you're watching this on video, make sure to watch at the very end. I'm including a video of Zach. I want to make sure we remember that these were talented, incredible, loving children who deserve to be here today. They are being deceived to death, and we need to do something about it. Okay, let's jump into my conversation with Chris Didier. Okay, so Chris, thank you so much for being here. Let's just begin with getting to know your son, Zach. Can you tell listeners what he's like, what his hobbies were? We'd love to just get to know Zach.
Yeah. Well, thank you first of all, for having me here and being part of your program. And I'm grateful for an opportunity to share our story. And thank you for the question. It's good to be here and work with you. Zach is a beautiful soul. He is a kid that really liked to leave a lasting impression. And he was really gung-ho to do well in so many aspects of life. He wanted to be the best version of himself, to help others be the best version of themselves. He was a critical thinker. He really liked to explore all the other angles and views and perspectives. He really enjoyed intellectual thought and conversation. Zach was successful in all aspects of academia. He was a bona fide straight A student with no exceptions. He was very athletic. He was a recognized multi-sport athlete. His 2 favorite sports were soccer and track and field. He learned to play 4 musical instruments on his own. He loved community service. He was right in the middle of trying to finish his Eagle project, despite the delays from COVID restrictions on doing these types of things. He aspired to earn the rank of Eagle, and really liked doing community service. He absolutely loved his friends, his family, dogs. He was a charismatic soul to all, a bright light in the world that really any family really would enjoy loving in their family, a kid to have. So of all these successes and attributes and qualities, I think the ones that I treasure the most, that I really find inspiration from, is his propensity to want to help his friends. And I saw that regularly. I was a head soccer coach for his team. I coached soccer for his team for 6 years. And quite often after practice, I'd watch him work on his speed work with his track mates. I helped them better their times. He was really fast. And then I know he helped his friends work on their SATs. He challenged them to do a better job, encouraged them to, hey, you can do this. You got this. He was the lead role in his high school musical theater production called High School Musical, which is an awesome adventure. And there's one scene in particular where he rallied his cast to get that one difficult piece that involved complex choreography and music to actually come together. And he really liked to help make it happen for his friends and not just himself. And that's something I really treasure the most.
Wow. Zach sounds extraordinary. And he was the baby of 3 kids, right?
Yes. The youngest of 3.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. You guys are in California. Can you tell me what happened to Zach just after Christmas in 2020?
Yeah. Well, so as you understand, the COVID lockdown restrictions impacted everybody. For Zach, it was tough. It was the end of his junior year. Things started happening with lockdown. Track season was canceled a few days before he was supposed to take the DMV behind the wheel driver test. That was canceled. Of course, junior prom was canceled. our vacation plans in the summertime were canceled. And when it was his fall semester of his senior year in high school, all our soccer games were canceled one after the other. Homecoming was canceled. And you kind of get an idea of like our kids were just going through an incredibly different time in their life that no one ever anticipated. Despite that, however, Zach really remained pretty optimistic. He came up with creative ways with his friends on how to socialize through a gaming program called Minecraft. Our older two kids came home from college because, again, there were no in-classroom instructions. So we kind of had a full house, which was fun and adventurous. And there was like a reunion effect, and we really were doing well with it. However, in December of 2020, our mall opened up. I think it's rated the second largest mall in Northern California. Really? The mall, it's called Galleria Mall. It's quite large. And I remember Zach announcing that, hey, Dad, our mall is opening up. I'm excited to go. And it was a little bit weird because Zach was never a mall kind of guy. However, I questioned that, and he said, Dad, we haven't been able, meaning he and his friends, we haven't been able to socialize and hang out. We're not living our senior year of high school the way we envisioned. And this is our first chance to get there. And it made sense to me. And as expected, the mall was full of middle school, high school kids, local community college kids, a lot of young people. But what none of us anticipated is there were other young people at this mall, young being in their 20s, who were there to peddle poison for profit, is how I like to see it. They were there with the intent to make a connection, to peddle, to market, to sell products for profit. And these products were lethal and dangerous. So that's what happened. Zach was at the mall. It was around Christmas time. He was with his friends, and they connected with the dealer through Snapchat. Snapchat features that were exploited by this dealer involved the geotagging, the quick ad feature, and the snap score feature, to name a few. And I had never heard of this. I didn't know anything about this before. And neither really did Zach's friends understand the pervasiveness of these features and how a dealer can connect. I learned all this from the investigator team that shared some of this detail. But what ended up happening is this dealer made a very short interaction with Zach and his friends. It was caught on surveillance camera. From talking to his friends and the investigator, what we understand the conversation was, hey guys, did you see my ad on my video on that I geotagged? And is there anything I can get you? And they talked about a lot of different things. The kids wanted to stay away from the hard stuff, what they thought would be hard, like heroin or cocaine. However, not realizing that what they were ending up buying or got interested in was something much more dangerous, and that was the prescription pill. I'm not sure why Zach and his friends decided to purchase it. One of his friends mentioned that the conversation was as an alternative to creatine or getting a good workout because he noticed they were fit. This is something called Percocet, and for those who don't know, Percocet is a prescription from your doctor for mild to moderate pain. And it was something that one could take to get a good workout and not have the effects of pain or strain from working out. So you get more push-ups, pull-ups, and things out there and get bigger muscles. Okay. Well, to a 15, 16, 17-year-old high school boy, that might make sense, and it was more out of curiosity. It was a mistake. It was a bad decision, but they didn't really understand that that decision was a lethal decision. So Zach and his friends thought they were purchasing a legitimate, harmless medicine called Percocet, like what you could get from a dentist. But in fact, they were sold a fake pill made of fentanyl, and Zach didn't have a chance.
Did it affect his friends as well?
We know one of them took their pill and they had no effect. Zach appears to have taken the hot pill. That's what we call it. So what happened is Zach came home. This was he was with his friends again on December 26th. As you would expect, kids want to hang out with their friends and girlfriend after they've been with their family for Christmas. So he hung out at the mall and just spent the day. That was his plan. He had dinner with his girlfriend and her family. They're an amazing family. He had a very tight relationship with his girlfriend, and he came home before curfew. And he had just gotten his driver's license. So as a father of a new driver in the family who's a teen,
yep.
My concern is their safety on the road, especially at night, and not to have no confidence in their skills. It's really their lack of experience to recognize that drunk driver kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And when he got home, I felt relieved, but I didn't realize there was imminent danger in his possession. We have a tradition where my kids and I like to watch a zillion Christmas movies. We want to break the record every season. Christmas is our favorite time of year, especially for Zach. And we watched a Christmas movie. Zach sat right next to me with Jake in between us, and our other kids, Allie and Sam, were there. And we're just another movie. And when the movie was done, it was bedtime, and Zach he acted normal. He didn't appear high or strained out or drunk or any of that, but just like a normal, responsible, kid. Yeah. And he went to bed. And that was the last time I talked to him. His last words were, "I love you, Dad." And the next day, tragedy struck. And I'm sure you understand and know this story. You've heard this story. When Zach hadn't appeared, I finally got to the point where I wanted to check on him, and I went in his room, and I found him appearing to be asleep at his computer desk. My first thought was, oh, great, he was playing Minecraft all night again, like he had done during COVID, and with his buddies, and he just fell asleep. But as I approached Zach to check on him, I sensed a void that I had never experienced before, and I knew something was horrifically wrong. And I knew I needed to help him. In my 26-year involvement in the military, you learn a lot about CPR or self-aid, buddy care kind of things. And I know I just kicked right into gear and I reacted and gently lowered him on the ground. At the same time, I alerted our other son, Sam, who I knew was somewhat close by on his laptop. And I yelled at Sam, "Buddy, call 911, something's wrong with Zach." And I started CPR. Sam came upstairs with the phone in his hand, and he wanted to help. At the time, Sam was a senior at UC Davis. He was finishing the rigors of his ROTC program to earn his commission. He wanted to be a hero. But as soon as he stepped in Zach's room, I witnessed my son Sam see the look of shock on his face when he saw his brother lifeless on the ground and his dad trying CPR, and he froze. And I told him, put the phone down. The 911 operator was outstanding. But I told him, you're going to need to help the first responders and get the dogs and tell Allie. And he did. It was something he gave him a mission, right?
Yeah.
I won't, it's truly the top of a parent's grief hierarchy when you witness your child not breathing and appearing to be gone. But when you witness suffering of your other children, And there's nothing you can do to assuage it or to help them. That kind of adds a layer of post-trauma stress. And it's really debilitating torment. But first responders came in, they got there pretty quick. I lost temporal awareness, but I think, I'm guessing around a half hour. They tried to do their best, and a decision was made. It was too late. I didn't accept that. I didn't like it. But that's when I was at my life's rock bottom at that moment. I think I had about 25 agents in the house at one point, to include sheriff and police, medtech, firemen, and of course a coroner team. They examined Zach's body and in his room for about 2.5 hours, and then the rest of my house, and then a coroner came down. Zach's mom, I guess, had done a run that morning, like a virtual run for something, but our daughter Allie called her. She came right back home, and by the time she got there, it was too late, and we told her outside. And at some point, the coroners talked to us and asked, has Zach had health issues or drug-related experiences? And I said no to both. It's a mystery, as you can imagine, as a first responder, to go into a home and see a very healthy 17-year-old boy, a young man, not breathing and not alive. So they're going to look everywhere. And they said, well, we think he probably just died of natural causes that were undetected. We didn't find any drugs, didn't find any paraphernalia, no residue, no clues. I said, we've had every known drug talk we knew to have. I've randomly examined his room. I used to track his phone and check on it until he was, I think, at the end of his freshman year or sophomore year. I kind of thought, all right, he's getting older. He's showing great responsibility. Do I need to? And I had just checked his room on December 24th or 25th, just randomly, because I know he's around people who vape and take edibles, because a lot of high school kids do. None of his friend groups that I knew of that were close to him were involved in that, but that doesn't mean that they're not exposed. And I never found any kind of marijuana, edibles, or anything illegal like that in his room. And when they said they didn't find anything, I wasn't surprised. So that night, I felt like he died from natural causes. However, the coroner did add, or it could be fentanyl. And I asked, well, why would you say that? Isn't that a pain medicine? And they said, well, actually, it is the most powerful of all Schedule II opioids. In fact, it's the only Schedule II opioid measured in micrograms. All the others are milligrams. That's 1,000 magnitude different. And we're just now finding mysterious deaths like this in our area. And the toxicology just started coming in the last week or two, and it showed fentanyl has been the cause. And we're seeing pills that are fake made of fentanyl, and it's taken the lives of young people who are self-medicating.
Wow. Yeah.
It was a big mystery to us. It's like a Mack truck came out of nowhere and hit us, and we didn't know about this. But again, that night, I just assumed he died from something heart-related or natural causes. But over the weeks, we started putting the puzzle together, and it in some couple really good breaks as far as important pieces to this puzzle came in, and it was confirmed that it was a fake pill.
Wow. Okay. Chris, I'm so sorry. How are Sam and Allie doing today?
Thank you for that. They're actually thriving, and that's what helps. That's really good therapy for me, and I know for Zach's mom, Laura, and Zach's grandparents. Allie's in Reno doing well, and Sam is active duty in the Air Force, and he just he got the harebrained idea of becoming some kind of Air Force fighter pilot. Don't know where that came from. And he finished pilot training and survival school, and now he's going to go. He's just moved to Virginia. I did a really cool. I was so grateful to have been asked. He and I did a road trip from Mississippi to Virginia, and now he's going to go learn to fly the F-22 Raptor. So he's doing really well.
Did you do that road trip with him, right?
I did. And it was such a bonding opportunity. Anytime I'm with my kids, it's always a bonding opportunity. I have unique experiences with all three. I like to do some things more with one kid than I don't do with others. And Sam, of course, is the military side. My eldest, Allie, is mountain biking. We do a lot of that, and hiking. And with Zach was soccer, and he was my scuba partner and my roller coaster partner. And we talked a lot about school musicals and plays, because I did that when I was in high school, and we had a lot of really good talks about that as he was looking to audition.
Yeah. What did Zach want to do when he grew up? He had so many interests.
That's a tough question to answer. Zach's mom, Laura, and I asked that a lot, and even his siblings. And he's gone all over the map, and he asks a lot about military service. He asks a lot about, being a doctor. He was enormously successful. He got a 1550 on that SAT halfway through high school. That's like 3 or 4 questions missed. I took that damn SAT like a dozen times and never got near that. And so he had the caliber to really put in applications. My kids got their looks and brains from mom, obviously, and I just was inspired and in awe, like, wow, you go, buddy. But what he consistently told us was, I really want to just help people. There was a scouting thing that he and I did. I don't know if you remember, years ago, there was a tragic fire story up in Northern California where the town of Paradise was completely destroyed from raging fires. And we went up there to help sort and distribute things that were goods that were collected, supplies for those who were displaced from their homes and lost everything. And we spent the day doing that. And he was saying on our drive back, Dad, that I really feel good about that. I really like that. I want to do more of that. So why we advocate is one of the reasons why can't he still help people? And I believe he is.
He definitely is. Okay, so I want to do some education for parents, but before we do that, can you tell me about the process of finding the drug dealer? Did you find the drug dealer, and what happened from there?
That's a really interesting story. So Zach I mentioned he had a really tight relationship with his girlfriend. They talked every single day without fail. Absolutely. Spent a lot of time. And I knew she was going to wonder what's going on. I had to call her. So I called her mom and dad and broke the news. It absolutely destroyed her. She's a couple of years younger than Zach, high school girl. Absolutely beautiful heart. And she insisted to come to the house the next day and wanted to be close to Zach. She laid in his bed for 4.5 hours. She wanted to smell Zach. She wanted to be with him because they spent a lot of time in his room watching movies and hanging out, and with the door open, because that was my rule. But she couldn't believe it and just needed to embrace him any way she can. And I checked on her every now and then, and I learned that she had shared the same passcode to her phone as Zach. And I tried it, and it opened his phone. So we alerted the district attorney's office. They said, put the phone in airplane mode, turn it off, plug it in, and don't touch it. And the next day, an agent came, and it took him 90 seconds to find a dealer on Snapchat. And then he said, Chris, this dealer just messaged Zach. We have a live fish, and we need to take this phone and try to catch this guy. And I said, go get him. And and they did. It's quite a lot of detail about that story, but eventually led to charges, which eventually had a case where they decided to plea. And now he's serving 17 years of jail in state prison. Laura and I, we're mixed emotions about it, because you can't really say there's justice. In my mind, justice would be to force the guy to make a time machine, go back and get my kid. But sadly, we are a significant minority of a family who gets any kind of accountability of what this person did. And our hearts break for those families who don't get that. So that's the story.
And listeners can't. So I recently spoke with Matt Capilouto, and he went into great detail with his legal process. And so listeners can definitely listen to that too. But I wonder, what was this drug dealer charged with specifically?
Good question. Our county is in Placer County. I really like our county. There's a lot to talk about with the education awareness piece with our county, but Zach's story was their first case. So they charged involuntary manslaughter and a few narcotics related charges, selling controlled substance, providing a controlled substance to a minor, and I think there's great bodily harm or great bodily injury. What do they call that? GBI, great bodily injury addition or extension. And I thought that seemed to be very light in charges. At the time, they said if we get a conviction, we're looking anywhere between 5 to 6 years of prison time, but that half time will probably cut that down to less than 3 years. And I thought that was disgusting. I tried very hard to, as well as our DA's office, to elevate it to the federal level, because the investigation and the conviction is still the same process, but the sentencing on these convictions are significantly different at the federal level. But our U.S. Attorney's Office for Eastern District in California decided not to take the case. And then we had a second case in our county where it was very obvious. They had learned a lot from Zach's investigation, so they charged murder for the second case, and they were going to do that with Zach's dealer, but the dealer opted to plea out and avoid a murder charge, and that's where we got.
Okay. Did you or the investigators have to work with Snapchat at all to get any records in this process? Were they cooperative?
At first, I don't know all these details. As far from what I recall, they subpoenaed Snapchat for any information. They didn't respond right away, and when they finally tried to, there was very little to no information. Laura and I first, there's another element here. Laura and I first met a family called Ed and Mary Ternan, and they founded a nonprofit called Song for Charlie. And we met all kinds of grieving families, actually, but that they were the very first grieving family we got to meet. And I'm thankful for what I've learned from Ed and Mary, and they helped open the aperture of understanding of here's what's going on, and here's the threat, the danger, how this is happening, and kind of felt like I was playing catch up. Well, Ed had brokered a deal to communicate with Snapchat top execs and invited a select group of parents. I think you've heard about this.
I have.
And yeah, Laura and I were the last couple to talk to them. And because we had that connection, when our investigators were saying we're getting nothing out of them, I had asked Ed, could you see if we can have a higher level contact at Snap? And our investigator did talk with them. They had an attorney in the room present. They were very select on their answers, but they did share, I think what he called them were pings to verify that, hey, we know the dealer was at this place at this time. And Zach was as well. And that's how we know they were connected, but it was all on surveillance video. You could see that they were talking. Their interaction lasted about a minute, if that. But as far as actual messages, there was no record of that provided.
Okay.
So it was limited support.
Right. Okay. And that conversation with the Snap executives was in 21, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was April 2021. So was 5 months after Zach died.
And in your opinion, 4 months. Have they made any meaningful changes to help mitigate this problem on Snapchat in the meantime?
I would say absolutely not. I'm grateful for the opportunity to help them see that there's a problem on their app. I didn't know at the time that they've already had been notified of, hey, there's people on your platform causing harm. And this one is actually deadly. And it's involving one of the most powerful synthetics that's been illegally manufactured. And our children are being deceived to death, and you have to do something about it. And I didn't realize that they had already had some other notifications, but I just assumed that they thought back then that, well, that was a one-off weird situation, but it was only growing. And I'm grateful that they, tried to bring awareness through PSAs and ads, and that's great. But the true measure of performance isn't how many profiles we're monitoring or how many people of experts that we're hiring to be on our team to try to solve this problem. The real measure of performance is no more deaths, no more harms. And every day you hear more stories of investigators saying this person was hurt or harmed, and this is how this harm came about. The conduit was Snapchat, and it continues to happen. And so I'm way past the point of trying to trust these guys. I have zero confidence that Snapchat's really going to do anything meaningful. They clearly have shown, hey, we'll do what we can as long as it's convenient, but they're going to continue to be productive, and they're going to keep profits ahead of people. And so I now pivot towards legislation to do something about it, because I don't trust the social media businesses.
No. And we'll talk about legislation. I think I have just one more question on where it's happening online. So why do you think the drug dealers are using Snapchat? Not to say that these things aren't being sold on other platforms, but why is Snapchat the primary platform, in your opinion?
From what I've observed and what I've been told by our investigators who constantly see this, it's because it's an ephemeral marketplace. It's a place where records are deleted and there's no trace of it, and it's a way to hide nefarious activity. When I first heard about Snapchat, when it came out, I think in 2011 or 2012, it was something I thought, oh my gosh, why on earth would anyone want to make a business that does that? Because all that does is invites nefarious content, nefarious behavior that's unhealthy. That is absolutely a poor business model, but it is also an incredibly profitable business model. And it's all driven by greed, I think.
Okay, last question about Snapchat. Do you now think that Snapchat is safe for teens?
No, I don't think it's safe for teens. And as long as teens are getting hurt, I don't think it's a safe place.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for all this detail. I think it's important that parents have the education they need to have conversations with their kids about this. So what have you learned regarding, let's focus on the fentanyl first. So
Sure.
what is like the high level of how this is getting into the hands of our kids? Besides, we already talked about the social media aspect, but where is it coming from, getting manufactured? That kind of process is good to know.
Well, I know you've had this on your show already, but for those who haven't heard yet, the main it starts from China. The main player here. They make the ingredients or precursors and ship them to Mexico. I believe it's a Manzanillo port in Mexico, and the multiple cartels who are involved here. But the two big players are the Sinaloa State cartel and the Jalisco Next Generation cartels. And what they're doing is working with chemists from Chinese companies to learn how to take these ingredients or precursors and make fentanyl powder, which is then used to lace cocaine, heroin, and meth, or as an acting agent in pills that made to look real but are not authentic. They're fake. The DEA now, since this crisis has evolved over the last several years, have announced that fentanyl is the leading cause of death of Americans ages 18 to 45, American adults. Narrowing it down to prescription pills, the DEA estimates well over 99% that are sold on the streets or through social media are fake. Personally, I think it's about 100%. I've presented to all 10 DEA crime labs, as well as worked with our local crime lab here in Sacramento. And pretty much they just don't see an actual legitimate medicine that's prescribed by a doctor being sold on the street for some kind of profit. It still happens, but these fake pills are so common and they're everywhere that it's easier. And now it's about 7 out of 10 pills can be lethal. Based on the latest update DEA averages throughout the nation. But I did a Western Summit, a family summit and a Western DEA lab, which is the West Coast. They analyzed over 3 million tablets, and they found about 84% have the potential to be lethal, or roughly 2 milligrams or more of fentanyl in each pill. So it's extremely risky. And being in California as a border state, this danger is absolutely real here. And sadly, the effect is UCLA Health reported about an average of 22 students die each week. That's a classroom of students from drug-related deaths in 2022. That was research done by the New England Journal of Medicine, I believe.
Parents ask often, why would they use fentanyl if it's so deadly?
Yeah.
Why would they want the buyers to die and not continue buying?
Nikki, that was my first question. When the investigator said, okay, here's an update. It looks like Zach took a fake pill. And we fully expect that toxicology will confirm it, which it did. And that was my first question. I've done nearly 100 student assemblies throughout the U.S. since then, and I think that is the most common question. Why would anybody make something that's going to kill their customers?
Right.
I think there's a lot of factors involved, but it comes down to one word, and that's just economics. It's so profitable. One DEA gave me a good explanation or comparison. The year Zach died in 2020, 1 kilo of heroin had a street value of about $80,000 and cost $10,000-ish to make, because you need a farmer, cultivators, harvesters. You can harvest the field 3, maybe 4 times for plant-based opioids like heroin. However, with fentanyl, it's in a lab. You just need some ingredients. You don't need a big organization. It's just a couple people mixing ingredients and make a batch. So in 2020, 1 kilo of heroin had a street value of about a net profit of 70,000, 80,000 to sell and 10,000 to make. 1 kilo of fentanyl back then had a street value that ranged between $2 to $10 million and was less than half the price to make or to assemble. So when you have something that is far cheaper to make and is extremely profitable beyond anything else that you've manufactured and marketed illegally, it's something that's the direction they're taking. And I believe that the cartels really don't care. It's been part of their business model that hey, we're making something addictive and there will be customers who lose their life, but there'll be more customers right behind them and we're going to make money like crazy. And they are.
And tell me about the addictive nature. So if it's not fatal, how addictive is it?
Well, I have no experience of a drug addiction story for me personally, but I have a lot of friends in my advocacy groups that have shared on, and I've learned a lot from them. But basically, the answer is fentanyl is one of the most addictive illegal drug on the street. For a dealer, selling is a very attractive product because in the past, if they sold a bag of heroin for whatever that bag cost, depending on how much content's in it, but let's just say they sell $10 of heroin to a user who's addicted, that user probably will come back the next day or a couple of days later for another bag, and they may have 100 of those users who are addicted to heroin. But now that there's fentanyl is so much more powerful, 50 times stronger and more effective than heroin and more addictive. But it doesn't last nearly as long. And so instead of selling a bag of heroin every day or every other day, they're selling a bag of fentanyl multiple times a day. So their customers come back much more frequent, usually 3, 4, 5 times in a day. And so they're getting more money more often. So it's just an extremely profitable market.
Wow. Okay. So I think parents are sufficiently worried now if they're listening to this conversation. Let's start with, how do we keep our kids away from fentanyl-laced pills sold on social media?
Well, I like that question a lot. And this is really what we try to do with when talking to parents, either at parent nights, community call to actions, town halls. And simply the message to the parents is, guys, if you're thinking, not my kid, you really need to rethink that. Fentanyl will not discriminate. I think Zach's a really good example of that. He's more of an acute story of a drug-related death as opposed to a chronic, long-term addiction story. And not that I want to distance myself from those who struggle from addiction. I think they're equal tragedies. But we have a new category of victim that's emerged where a person can try something they think is harmless that they feel is going to help them, and it's lights out for them. So we really need to up our game as parents, and we need to keep our kids away from it. And the first step is to learn what's actually going on and understand the danger and accessibility of these dangers and the deception that are behind these dangers. So we need to learn and talk to our kids. Talk to the parents of your teens' friends, talk to your teachers, your coaches, your counselors, and have a sit-down talk. To answer your question more directly, you need to know what's going on their cell phone. Now, I also know that just not having a phone or not having Snapchat on their phone isn't the one-stop shop solution,
right?
Because even kids, I've seen this every assembly. They average about 1,000 students every single assembly I've done. There's kids in the audience with a cell phone, and when they're waiting for us to start, they're like taking this phone and like, "Hey, buddy, check this out." And so you may have a child that's at school without a phone, but that doesn't mean they don't have access to a phone because their friends have them. or they have a Chromebook, or they have a laptop that they're accessing the internet. And yes, you can get on social media on regular website browsers.
Yep.
So we really need to sit down and talk with them. Some of the counseling that I've learned is really to have effective communication. I know that each family and each kid is unique. So what works for one family, one kid won't work for all of them. They're all unique as your fingerprint. And so we need to kind of talk about it. Having good communication is a good start. I think good communication could include, showing interest and that you're trying to listen, to hear their perspective, to see their perspective. I think it's important to give encouragement to our kids so they can help negotiate problems, and help them negotiate problems and get their opinion. Well, how do you think about this? What do you think the right thing to do is if you're asked, hey, smoke this or eat that or take this, so they can learn how to negotiate problems, not just at home, but when they're away from home. I also think it's important to establish healthy boundaries. We establish boundaries as parents, at least my parents did, and most parents today got this when they were kids. Hey, don't do this, do that, right? Well, if we have boundaries in the real world, shouldn't we have them in the cyber world? And then monitoring, I think, is important, because if we don't know what's going on in our kids' world, we may be missing out. Ultimately, having a conversation with your kids is important, because if you're not talking to your kids, someone else is.
Yeah. And you can start when they're young. I mean, my 8-year-old knows we talk about medicine and how you should only take medicine, especially prescribed you by a doctor or given to you from your parent, if it's over the counter. But she very much understands that medicine of any kind can hurt her if it's not given to her specifically for her ailment. So these conversations can start very early if you're lucky enough to have young kids and get ahead of it. Let's talk about what to do if you find yourself in a situation where your child has been exposed to fentanyl, potentially exposed to fentanyl.
I'm really glad you asked this question, because I wanted this to come out, and we share this to teens. You could be at your friend's house, at a park, at the mall, at an event, doing whatever, and you kids can find their friends. Seeing something. The big thing is to understand what happens when someone has the effects of fentanyl. Fentanyl, what it does is it's a depressant. It basically attaches to the opioid receptors of your brain, and it overrides your regulation on how you breathe. Nikki, right now you're sitting in your chair. Most adults will breathe around 10 or 12 times a minute. Inhale and exhale 10 times a minute, and fentanyl just makes it go down to 8, and then 6, and then 4, and then 2 times a minute, and then 0. From first ingestion, it could take as little as 2 minutes till you pass out. So a person is extremely sleepy. They're very non-responsive, and really you're going to know your friends or your child. It's not normal. Something is not normal. Shallow breathing. Their lips and fingernails turn blue. They're unresponsive. Pupils are tiny. You might get a loud snoring towards the end. Just not normal. So obviously, if something's not normal, you're going to, hey guys, what's going on? Hey, wake up, wake up. If they're not waking up, you absolutely have to act. When I was in high school and college, if we were at a party and someone had too much to drink or consume, and they were just wiped out, we just kind of had the notion of, well, let's just let them sleep it off. But we can't do that anymore, because they're not going to sleep it off much more than a few minutes until their heart stops. We have to take action. So the first step is to call 911. That's the absolute first step. And then if there's naloxone, like Narcan around, I definitely recommend giving that. And then if they're still non-responsive, you can start chest compressions until EMT shows up. But calling 911 is absolutely critical.
Okay. And explain why so if you give the Narcan and they're responsive, why you should still call 911.
I think 911 is the first step. Even if they come out of their stupor and they wake up, because Narcan is, I like what one EMT describes it. He says Narcan will throat punch fentanyl and force it away from your opioid receptors. However, Narcan has a smaller half-life than fentanyl. So fentanyl just kind of orbits around and waits for Narcan to dissolve, and then it reattaches. So you can go back into an overdose type of, or intoxication from fentanyl situation and stop breathing again. So one of the reasons why I like to think about it is when you call 911, they're bringing more Narcan to the scene because it's going to be needed. Since fentanyl is so powerful, it's extremely likely you're going to have multiple doses of that as you get transported to the hospital.
Okay. And is Narcan available publicly? Like if you're out in public or at a concert or at school, like can we expect there to be Narcan available in those locations?
I think it's unique for each school district, but I hear more and more schools have them in campus, either because they're supported by the Health and Human Services or their county school districts. But I would definitely, as a parent, ask, hey, is there Narcan in my school? Where is it? How accessible is it? You can call 211, which is like an information line for county resources. So it attaches you to your county when you call them, and they can give you help as far as like what services you need, whether it's mental health help, whether it's for counseling, or hey, I'm interested in getting Narcan. Where can I get some from my county? You can go to your emergency room. You can go to local urgent care and ask, hey, do you guys have Narcan? And they usually give it out for free. You can buy it on Amazon, but it's not that difficult to either call 911 for your local wellness center or go to urgent care or emergency room and get Narcan. And I just keep it around like a fire extinguisher.
Yeah. And do they have it at local pharmacies too?
I believe they do. Yes. Most pharmacies do. And if you need a prescription, you should be able to get that from your doctor with no problems.
Okay. Okay. So last area of conversation here. So when I talked to a retired DEA agent about this, I asked him if Snapchat were to go away, would this problem get better? And he said, absolutely. Now, unfortunately, Snapchat is not going to go away. We need to regulate it and force it to make its platform safer by design, and add on the layers of protection where parents can get alerts of harmful behavior. And so what legislation federally are you aware of that would help this issue related to the social media access to the drugs?
Well, specific to the drugs, I think the Earn It Act, the SHIELD Act, COSA, COPPA, APRA, Sammy's Law, I think are all great ideas and measures that need to go through.
Yeah.
I think Sammy's Law is a good example because it requires third-party monitoring on social media apps, so that it alerts parents, hey, we can't tell you, we don't know what the actual content is, but the topic seems to be suicide or eating disorder or CSAM or prescription pills, drug-related stuff. Yeah. And it alerts the parents to say, okay, something's going on between my child and that contact on a topic I don't approve. Yep. And so I think that's a good thing. Now, I do want to go back to what we were talking about with a message to the parents, and that is putting a parent control app or a tracker on your kid's phone, or just not having the phone I mentioned earlier, isn't a solution. It does not obviate the need of having a meaningful, honest conversation with your kids.
Yes.
And if you just do that, you have to know it doesn't take much effort to go on YouTube and research it. I have examples I could share where a kid can literally break through a parent control app like Bark and others, so that they're getting content that the parent thinks they're not allowed to have access to. You can also spoof your location to say, hey, I'm having a sleepover at my girlfriend's house, and it looks like they're at their girlfriend's house, but that's not where they're at. There are programs on YouTube that teach our kids how to get around those types of features and programs. So really need to have a meaningful conversation.
Right. Okay. And then hopefully with better regulation, some of that harmful content will just be unavailable to them, specifically with COSA, I think would really help with that.
Absolutely.
And I just
the duty of care and third party.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just interviewed Chair Kathy McMorris Rogers about APRA and COSA, and so and there was a hearing today about APRA and COSA. So I'm getting on the line with more Congress members of Congress. And what would you, is there anything you would like me to reiterate to them regarding this issue?
I'm assuming you heard the hearing about Sunset 230.
Yeah,
CDA 230.
Well.
Yeah, that was really good. And I didn't know you were interviewing Kathy McMorris Rogers. I have spent a lot of energy. I'm an executive board member for a nonprofit called Victims of Illicit Drugs. Amy Neville used to be part of us. Jaime Puerta you interviewed, and we have tried very hard to get to Congress to say, you need to update Section 230C. Right. We worked with several other nonprofits. So I think the big message is we have to get past the idea that was a solution that will last forever. It doesn't. In 1908, Ford Model T was introduced, and about a year into it, they made 10,000 cars. And in 1913, the U.S. finally started reporting deaths from car accidents. It was new. Not many people had them at first, but over a span of about 5 years, more and more people are having them, and more accidents were happening. And 1913 was one of the deadliest years. Even though not many people had them, there was an average of 33 and a half deaths for every 10,000 cars. Last year, we averaged 1.5 deaths for every 10,000 cars, and we have far more drivers and vehicles on the road. But that's a 95% reduction in car deaths. Why is that? Well, when we first had the Model T, the Model A, and all that, there weren't really rules of the road. But once it became more common and more popular, we had to establish rules of the road. We had to, make it so that people got driver's license. We invented stop signs, stop lights, basically safeguards, seat belts, airbags, anti-lock brakes. You can't make a car unless you comply with National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration's requirement to pass certain safety measures. There are safeguards there. Well, in 1996, when they codified Section 230C, that was like the Ford Model T era, where it was just the internet providers, and there wasn't such thing as social media, and very few people had access to email or even used email back in the early 90s. That it was just, the dawn of a whole new thing. But now we have so much traffic on the cyber world, like we have traffic on freeways. We have to have safeguards like we do for driving cars. And so we need to catch up. And that's what I'm trying to do. So if you talk to Catherine Morris Rogers or Doris Matsui, she's in the district. Our family has a relationship with her. I'm trying very hard to work with them, to talk with them. I've shared a lot of this information, but I definitely want to advocate the need to update Section 230C to implement safeguards.
Okay, good. And I think the conversation at the hearing this week was good, was productive, and a lot of the attendees were in favor. So I'm hopeful for that as well. And I have more interviews coming up with Representative Kamek from Florida and others. And so I'll make sure to always talk about Section 230 and the need for that sunset, I feel strongly about that and how helpful that would be, either sunset or revision, just right. So anything to bring it up to current day and start protecting our kids. So anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share with listeners who are mainly parents who are already concerned about social media and looking for guidance?
Nikki, there's two topics, and you don't have to have this in your show, but I would like to talk about, just, you may already know this, and if you don't, you might be interested in hearing about it. But one is terminology, and the other one is the harm reduction coalition factor. Okay. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, totally.
Well, terminology, I think, is an important topic. As you can understand, when there's a new crisis or a new problem in our country, oftentimes we need better terminology or words to help explain this problem, and in hopes to finding and explaining a solution to this problem. And I think that there are a lot of words, a lot of terminology that applies in the case of this thing called a fake pill, or illegally manufactured fentanyl. But the top three, to me, is important. The first one is overdose versus poisoning. I think a lot of people are hearing this more. I know, medically speaking, when you take too much of something, you overdose from it. But we really need to look at the manner of death. And coroners have to consider the manner of death, not just the cause of death or the mechanism of death. Right. And when you look at the manner of death, especially like what happened to my son and thousands of others that were poisoned. I like to compare the 1982 Chicago incident with extra strength Tylenol, when 7 people died, including a 12-year-old girl who thought they were taking extra strength Tylenol to manage pain, but they consumed potassium cyanide. And the government cleared all the shelves in the U.S. of extra strength Tylenol, and they investigated it. And that's where the tamper-proof seals came from, was from that incident, from those 7 deaths. Those people didn't overdose on Tylenol, or to say they overdosed on potassium cyanide, or they were addicted to potassium cyanide. It's not the story. They just were poisoned.
Is the CDC still reporting these as overdoses? Because the recent stat was like, in the past 3 years, fentanyl overdoses, or just overdose deaths for kids aged 13 to 17 has tripled, or doubled or tripled. Now, do they mean poisonings and overdoses? Like, what are they differentiating?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. I talked to CDC Director Mandy Cohen in August last year about that on a trip in DC. Can we start incorporating the term poisoning when factoring the manner of death? And they said that at this point, we look at it from a medical perspective, whether they are aware or unaware, we just call it an overdose. And I asked, can we change that? Then she said, that's something we should definitely talk about, but I never got a follow-up call. Okay. There's 2 other factors I think are noteworthy. In terms of terminology. One is legitimate versus illicit fentanyl. As we talk about fentanyl and causing all these deaths, it kind of can come across as demonizing fentanyl. And it is a fact that it is an FDA-approved medicine where a lot of Americans have benefited greatly from legitimate fentanyl. So I try my best to say illicit anytime I say the word fentanyl, because I don't want to close their ears if they or someone they care about have benefited from legitimate fentanyl in the hospital setting. We're talking about the illicit fentanyl. And the other one is the term laced versus fake. I think this is commonly misspoken. As you know, laced is by definition is adding to a known substance. To say cocaine laced with fentanyl is accurate and appropriate because there's cocaine and someone put fentanyl in it. But a common misspeak, I think, is to say pills laced with fentanyl, because I think it could potentially conjure the idea that someone took actual prescription pills, maybe they stole it from mom or dad's medicine cabinet, and somehow sprinkle fentanyl on it. And now you have an Adderall that has fentanyl in it. And for someone thinking, well, you know, I need Adderall so I could study for my finals or my midterms. And if it's laced with fentanyl, that's probably just a little bit of fentanyl won't affect me. But what will help me is the Adderall I get.
Right.
Well, every crime lab I've talked to, I've asked, have you actually encountered an actual authentic prescription pill that also had fentanyl in it? And every one of them have said, no. That's not what's happening here. What's happening is these are pills that are fake pills made of fentanyl. So I have yet to
ingredients in there besides fentanyl in the fake pills. Is it just like filler?
So yes, the way it's been described is exactly like you said. It's just a pill that has bonding and filler, and the acting agent is fentanyl and only fentanyl. So if it looks like a Xanax bar, there's no Xanax in that Xanax bar. There's no Percocet in the Percocet Zach thought he was taking. It was just fentanyl as the acting agent. So I haven't yet seen a case where there was a pill laced with fentanyl. I just say fake pill made of fentanyl, just so that people think, okay, it's like counterfeit money. There's no like, well, part of this $20 bill is real and this part is fake. It's all fake.
Right.
Or it's actual. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. That's very helpful for me and others.
Cool.
Thank you so much for spending time with me today, introducing us to Zach.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to include a couple of his videos in this because I think they're just so important to see and share. And he was so extraordinary and continues to save lives through his story, and you're telling it. So thank you so much, Chris, for doing this. And we'll be sure to stay in touch.
I am grateful for the opportunity to be here. So thank you for your efforts, your Herculean efforts to get the education awareness piece out there. I'm definitely an admirer, and I will continue to follow your program closely. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You ready? Me too.